Hello little hoes, my name is Kristen and welcome back to my channel. Today I am talking about all things pots, pottery, and containers for plants. Now I think there's two main groups. The people that choose pots solely on aesthetics, what they like that fits with their decor, and people that choose pots or containers solely based on the needs of the individual plant. So I'm going to be focusing more on the latter today and not so much aesthetics. So let's get into it, the different types of containers, what their downsides are, and good attributes. I'm going to start with my favorite, and that's going to be Terracotta Pots. And the reason I love these is, one, they're super cheap. You should be able to find them at most box stores where you live pretty easily. It's not hard to obtain them. The downside is they do shatter pretty easily, so maybe don't put it anywhere that the cats will likely knock it off because they will break. But the reason I like these so much is that terracotta is a very porous clay. I also love it for aeroids because I feel it really helps to draw out excess moisture. So some aeroids are very specific. They don't like to have wet feet, so this provides a little bit of airflow just with how porous that material is. I also really love it for succulents and cacti, especially ones that are very picky and do not like to be overwatered, just because I will water it and all that excess moisture will eventually start to be drawn out by the pot. So that means it's less likely to get overwatered. Sometimes for certain succulents that are incredibly picky about water, such as lithops and the like, I will water the pot, but just at the edge. So most of that excess water is going to be absorbed right away by the terracotta and not just pool up right by the plant. So the downside to this is not all plants like it. I have noticed that some anthuriums, especially the velvety type, don't particularly seem to like this. I think it draws out a little bit too much moisture, and with anthuriums and certain others, they don't really like to be saturated at the roots, which makes setting it in like a little pool of water in a tray not really a great option. Second one is glazed ceramic pots. So oftentimes these guys will have sort of a clay base to them, and they are coated in a glaze that has been fired in a kiln so that it's quite strong and durable. Downside is oftentimes glazed ceramics are going to be more expensive than plain old terracotta. They also do, in my opinion, hold in the moisture a little bit better than just plain terracotta. I feel these type of pots really bridge the gap between aesthetics and functionability, just because a wide range of plants will be quite happy in these type pots. Plastic pots. Now let's talk about these uggos. If you are anything like me, you like to recycle these and get more uses out of them than just buying the one plant and throwing it away. So I have stacks and stacks of these. I'm sure most of you do. These guys are great because they do keep in moisture quite a bit. It's also super helpful if you are transitioning from, say, water propagation to soil. It keeps it at that more consistent dampness and doesn't dry out as much as, say, your terracotta and clay pots might. They are cheap and you can recycle them multiple times. You can even wash and sterilize these. You can just get a bleach wipe and wipe it down. So really great for that repurposing. You can also just get these, and if you don't like the look of them, something like that. Just have a cash pot or a cash po, or however the fancy people say it. And you can hide it pretty well. I also want to talk a little bit about this. This is an aquatic plant basket or pot. This is also used quite frequently as an orchid pot, and orchid pots are pretty much similar except that generally they are clear and have longer slits in them instead of multiple small holes. This and orchid pots are great for plants that need extreme air circulation. So some aeroids that really do not like to be saturated, that need that good airflow and ventilation to do well, thrive in this. I actually had my billet recovering in this after I got that import. I just put sphagnum moss in here, put the little plant trunk in, and left it in my terrarium. This isn't just for orchids, and moss works tremendously well in it. Chunky mixes work well in it. You probably just can't use any normal potting soil with finer bits because obviously it will come right through the holes. Let's also talk about recycled dilly cups like this. I have a Dark Lord propagating in here, and I like the deli cups because one, it's going to be like the plastic, it's going to hold a lot more moisture. You can also control if it has any holes in it or not. Heat up a knife and make some holes at the bottom if you do need drainage. The great thing about the clear plastic deli cups, besides recycling, is that you can see the root development, which means you don't have to take your plant out of the media that you have it in to check the roots. Great option if you are propagating and want to know how it's going without disturbing your plant. Let's talk now about holes versus no holes. I get asked this all the time, and it's kind of a hot button issue for some people whether or not your pots should have drainage holes. Some people say absolutely always pots without holes are useless. Some say they are super helpful because I don't want the water draining all over my house, all over my furniture, windowsills, things like that. I am right in the middle. I personally don't think that if you are a newbie, you should opt for pots without drainage holes. I think drainage holes are going to be helpful if you're just starting out so that you can get used to watering. And if you overwater, it's less likely that you will rot your plant out because you will be able to have drainage. I personally have a number of planters without drainage holes and don't find it to be too much of an issue. That being said, I do have a lot more experience in plants, and I think that's key to getting away with growing plants in no-hole pots. Knowing the plant, its needs, how much you can water it without it becoming just a swamp in that container. When it comes to watering those plants in pots with no drainage, I always try and make sure to do a more shallow watering versus a saturation. That is going to prevent you from just having water stagnant and sitting at the bottom of the container with nowhere to go. And as we're on to it, drainage holes. What do you do when your drainage hole is massive and the dirt you're using will fall right through it? What I do is I take broken shards of terracotta and I place it over part of that hole. Sometimes you can just put it over the entire thing if it's sort of dome shaped. If it's more flat like this, it's just going to plug up that drainage hole and you will not get any drainage out of it. So don't block it entirely. You can also get metal mesh, the finer stuff that has really tiny holes, and layer that over the hole so that you won't get as much soil coming out the end. Let's talk repotting. So this is another issue that people like to debate about. How big is too big? How soon is too soon? So if your plant is showing signs that it's just super root bound, such as it's needing water much more frequently, it's wilting a lot more frequently, and it's not due to just sudden increase in sunlight, it might be time to repot. If it's pretty obvious that the plant has way outgrown the capacity of the pot, it's time to go up a size in pot. Now, how big is too big? A lot of people will go by the 2-inch method, which is don't go any bigger than 2 inches at a time. And the reason is you will have so much excess soil around that plant that it's a lot tougher for that plant to fill it out successfully and not rot out. Think of it this way. You have all that soil surrounding the plant, and when you water it, that whole thing becomes saturated. The plant can only take up so much water, and there's only so much transpiration and evaporation going on. So when you water it, a lot of that soil will just sit there damp and potentially rot the roots out. That being said, I have gotten away with planting an itty bitty plant in a much bigger pot, bigger than 2 inches difference from the original pot, and have had success. And the reason is that I shallow water those plants. And I try not to plant anything like succulents that are especially prone to getting rotted out. Again, if you are a newbie, I would abide by the 2-inch rule. If you're more experienced, then yeah, absolutely. Give it an experiment to this. Maybe go bigger than you think you need. That will do it for today, guys. If you have any questions or comments of your own, please leave them below. I would love to hear them. As always, stay safe, healthy, and sane, and I'll talk to y'all real soon.